big victory last night against the Calgary Flames, and so happy to have you on the podcast. Initially, what's been your thoughts of Craig Berube, the job he's done in Toronto thus far, Mr. Bowman?
Well, I mean, they've had a great record, and I watched the game last night, and I was thinking about the end of the game. It's so different than when I was coaching now that, you get a 2-goal lead, and when they take the goalies out with between 2 and 3 minutes to go, it's pretty hectic. And, if the other team scores a goal with, enough time left to move within a goal, that's the one area. I mean, they did announce on the broadcast that they spent a lot of time in their broadcast in their practice rather, about trying to defend with the other, team taking the goalie out. And that's the one area where, I mean, they can score goals. I was watching, and I wasn't pulling for Calgary because, I'm always worried about everything, but I don't talk to my son Stan a lot, but I guess I've become an Edmonton fan now, and, they got a good lead, but I never say a lead is good until it's mathematically the other team can't catch you. So I don't pull for Calgary or those kind of teams. And I didn't know if they defended as well as I would like to, but with the goalie out, it's hard to say. I thought Toronto's goalie looked pretty solid in the net, and I think it's happened quite a bit this year with the goalie out and 2 goals down, and the other teams can score a couple of goals.
Yeah, it is, Scotty, and obviously great having you on here and getting a chance to speak with you. I guess like for me, just this perspective, obviously Craig Berube comes in, and you're a guy, you've bounced around, you've been in different organizations, you have different roles, you've won so many Stanley Cups. Craig Berube won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues, and now he comes into Toronto, this giant market with this big core. What would be your, I guess, words of wisdom to Craig Berube, or how you would want to approach a team like this heading into playoffs, trying to get them ready to try to win a Stanley Cup?
Well, they're playing with confidence, and you've got game breakers. They have enough scoring. I think the fact is that he's trying to use a few more players at the right time. I don't know what they have. I mean, you'd like to see a shutdown line. That's the only thing I would say to hit. Maybe he doesn't have the personnel. I don't know all the personnel right down to the end. And the good teams seem to always have one line that you really depend on. And I noticed last night late in the game they put Matthews. Matthews was on quite a long time in the last couple of minutes, and Tavares was out with him. I mean, that would be for face-off, obviously, but that's the only thing I would say is. They're not going to have enough trouble. They've done a good job, though. I mean, when you think about it, they're only a couple of points right out of the top of the whole whole division. So I would say just the fact that insulate their defense. They had McCabe and they had Tanev on, and I was wondering who they're going to come back with next. Ekman Larson has had a good year for them. He's an experienced defenseman, and that's the one area where I think he's got to really concentrate on these teams that can score goals. Can they defend at the right time? And that's what I would say. Just making sure that they don't have to worry about scoring goals. I don't think when you got the scoring punch of Matthews and Nylander now, and Marner wasn't there, and Tavares, they got enough scoring. They got to really work on their defense because, that's the thing that I'm looking at. Washington and the Panthers, those teams. Edmonton has to do the same thing. I mean, they start slowly some nights, but Toronto and Edmonton play similar. They attack a lot. They can score goals, and the question is, can they really defend? And that's the big thing in the playoffs.
Obviously, you have a wealth of experience. It is a trade deadline season. What do you remember, about some of the deadlines that you facilitated, worked with, and what do you think the Leafs could look to add here over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, obviously, you're always worried about your defense. I don't know their depth after. I mean, that's what I've always felt is you have to be ready for the playoffs. And I think if you don't think you have eight at least eight that could play in a crunch in the playoffs are tough. I remember my last year in Chicago or in Detroit rather, we had a really solid, experienced defense core. Especially fellows like Nick Lidstrom and Chelios were real anchors for their pairing. But we had a young defenseman that we had Yuri Fisher, and we were getting ready to play the final game or the fifth game to clinch the series. And Yuri he was a young kid. He was doing well. He was playing with Chris Chelios, and he got suspended for one game, which was the final game. Was going to be our final game. But we had another player that we hadn't played for about 6 weeks, Yuri Slager, and we just didn't put him in because we didn't have enough, space for him. Boy, he came in, and we're lucky that we were in the finals. Imagine that, and he played the first time in 6 weeks, and he played about 15, 18 minutes, and he did his job. So I'm always conscious that now that you really have to have a defense core because they're blocked, especially now the way they block shots, and injuries are popping up pretty readily with the teams. So I don't know what their defense core is going to be like going down the stretch, but that's what I mean. It's not easy to find, but they could use an experienced defenseman.
Yeah, I think every team, right? We always talk about, what pieces gets added, and it's hard, right? Because we know it's Scotty, right? Like everybody's looking for, bottom six guys or a centerman or D. For me, I guess there's one contract. I don't know how much you follow it, but Bobby McMahon, right? We talk a lot about him. He makes $1.36 million. He's got 16 goals this year. He's a big body. He fits well, and it kind of reminds me of when in 2013 on the Blackhawks when I was there. I was lucky enough to be part of the team with Stan. Brian Bickle. Remember how good Brian Bickle was during that playoff run? So is there some guys like that you see or you remember that you played with that are like those guys in the lineup that not necessarily are the stars, but like push your team over the top to help you win a cup in the bottom six, or, like guys that aren't the big contracts?
Yeah, you're right, because this boy's come out of nowhere. I quite a story with him. I have a good friend of mine that's a high-class doctor in Buffalo, Zvi Sharf, and his son Ben Sharf. His best friend is Bobby, and they went to Colgate together. And I met him had lunch one night, or one day rather, with the doctor and his son. Ben didn't go on to a college career. He owns a business now in New York City, but his best friend is Bobby McManus, and I met him, and he had a cast on his leg. I couldn't believe now he's an NHL player. I didn't pay attention to what he did in college, but no, I think the role players are so important in the playoffs because sometimes they're a lot fresher because during the season they've only played 10, 12, 13 minutes, and then you get into playoffs, and fatigue is always a big factor, and going down the stretch. This year, I don't know, with maybe the 10 days that these most of the players, well, except the ones that are in the tournament, they're going to take a good rest. I find now, as you get down to this time of the year, back-to-back games are crucial. There's going to be some back-to-back games, I'm sure, because of the standings in the East and West are tight. There's going to be back-to-back games, and it's the high-paced game, and you need your player. You need a good. I don't know if you can just keep playing these players. I mean, the top players, the teams are doing it though. Tampa's doing it. Edmonton does it. The minutes when they get into 20 plus minutes, 25 minutes a game for a forward, it's pretty high pace. And can they continue on once the playoffs start? But I don't think you're going to be able to sit down and relax the last week or two of the season. You're not going to find many teams that are going to be able to sit players and rest them.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
You got to use your bench.
Yeah, definitely. And as you know, I mean, today's NHL is way different, just in a variety of different aspects. Among them is something Carter knows very well, and that's the crease. The tandem has been a commonplace in this league. How do you feel about Toronto's crease, and how do you feel about a team that has a tandem potentially winning a cup? Do you think they need to pick one guy before to get to playoffs?
Well, Toronto, I think this is to me the most consistent goaltending that they've had for some time, because they've had some goalies that you expected to do well, and injuries made a factor. But Stolarz has never played a lot of games in the league, but he had a good stretch last year with Florida, and he's been around, and he seemed to me to have had a pretty good start with Toronto. And I saw Wall play in the playoffs, a playoff game of, it must have been 2 years ago anyways, in Tampa. And I noticed him. I thought he looked pretty good in that game. And he's now come on this year. He looks pretty good to me. So I think the combination with the Leafs is going to be good for them, because the pressure is not going to be on one goalie. And Carter with no goaltending, but I don't know. Stolarz has. It's not like a shot in the dark, because he's had enough experience in the league. He hasn't played a ton of games, but he's sat out now for over a month, and you're coming back. Is he ready to come back now, or?
Yeah, believe tomorrow. Yeah,
he's back tomorrow. So I think they're in as good a shape as they've been. They haven't been in this good shape on the goaltending. I like both goalies so far in what they've done this year, and I think that having the both of them ready to go down. I mean, yes, you get in the playoffs, and you don't know if one can carry the ball all the time. I don't know if that's possible. Probably not with these two, because they haven't had a lot of long playoff runs, and that's something that they'd have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think there is that experience factor, right, Scotty? I remember my days where I started in Nashville and I play 18. Then all of a sudden you have a year where you play 40 or 50. It shocks the system a bit, right? And you have to adjust. And I think that's why having two of these guys is great, because they both don't have that experience. And something that's been a hot button issue with this Leafs team all year, as of late, it's been is the power play. Like, as a head coach, is that something that you kind of keep an eye on? Or like, I didn't know how it worked when you were coaching more. Did you manage the power play, or did you have an assistant that worked it? And if it was struggling, what makes a successful power play in your mind?
Well, certainly the players that you have, you gotta let them do what they want to do. I think depends on the talent level. If you have really top-notch players, like, there's different ways to do it, as long as you do it continually and know what you're doing. But it seems now that the teams that have a lot of structure, they do well for a while, but then you have to have a little bit of random for these skilled players to move around. I think penalty killing is something now, and the way they block shots, the way they use their sticks, so much different than when I ever coached. We never did all that kind of stuff, but now obviously when you're killing a penalty, I still like the pressure game when you're killing a penalty. So if you're killing a penalty and you're using the pressure, the first coach that ever did it when I was coaching, and it was Daryl Sutter, and Daryl was with Chicago, and then he went to San Jose, I think, after that, and he liked all players moving. You have to make the right decision. There's another coach that was a good penalty killing coach. It's still in the league, John McLean. And he had about the same style, that when the puck is moving and you have one guy going out to get the puck carrier, the other three are making a position to choose the right place, the most dangerous guys. So when you have a team that has a power play that's stationary, that system works pretty well. But when they start to roam around quite a bit and it can interchange, I think Detroit's doing that a little bit now with Todd McClellan, because the Brinket does. He's a really good player on that side, like along the lines. Well, we know the top ones I've ever remember lately are Ovechkin and Stamkos, that could really fire that. Now you got Draisaitl on the other side. I have to ask Carter about that as a goalie. I can't believe how can Draisaitl beat these goalies continuously. Like, I don't know as a coach. I don't know if I like that play, but the puck keeps going in. Is it because of the speed, or what is the reason that he's in an angle? Stamkos does. I remember talking to Steve when he was with Tampa a few years ago. He was always a very friendly guy, and I asked him one year. He was playing between the dot and the top of the circle, and then I noticed they were taking that away from him. So then he moved down from the bottom of the circle to near halfway, like, towards the goal line. And I said to him one day, I met him, and I said, going into the game, and I said, Steve, aren't you taking the angle away from you? You're going way down. Like, oh no, but he said, they won't defend that pass as easy as the other one. So he said, what I try to do, I just get the puck as hard as and fast as I can at the goalie. And I'm not trying to score. I'm trying to put it right at the goalie. And we're looking for the rebound, because we have two guys, one in the bumper and we have one in chasing pucks. I think they had Point in the middle all the time. And I just was wondering, how does Draisaitl, like on the power play, how does he get, like, the Edmonton power play is dangerous when it's humming, because they all move around. Isn't that how they do that? I don't think they have a lot of structure.
No, they move. And I think Draisaitl being on such a steep angle makes it hard for the goalie, right? So you think about the goalie having to be like, respect the guy that walks in the slot, whether it's Bouchard or McDavid. You know, McDavid draws so much attention and usually feeds it to him. And I think it's such a steep angle for the goalie to get back on that angle, where versus like where the Ovechkin or Stamkos higher shot would be, it's kind of a flatter angle, a little easier to get to. And I think what happens a lot with goalies on the Draisaitl goal is, we're taught now to hit our posts always with our skate. So when you initially slide into that post, you hit your skate first, and there's a little bit of give where you catch the post, and then you have to try to build up your upper body to get there. And I think Draisaitl has just mastered it from such a steep angle where goalies get caught a little bit too high. And it's something that's been impressive to watch, because it's almost like we know it's coming, similar to Stamkos, similar to Ovechkin, and it just keeps happening. And I think it's just the additional threat and the awareness.
You're probably thinking, and you got to worry about McDavid.
Yeah.
You're right. He's not telegraphing his pass all the. You know it's going there, but he seems to be like. I watched it last night before the Calgary Toronto game, and in overtime, what a play he made! Like, because he had to stick handle around the defenseman, and then he had to make a backhand pass, to a player that doesn't play a lot on the power play, Connor Brown. And I think it's his first overtime goal he ever scored. But, I mean, it just was but he doesn't do that as much when he's going to pass to Draisaitl. But it's just amazing how I just wondered how these one-timers that go in from each side. And, it's Detroit, as I said before, with Raymond and DeBrincat, interchangeable, pretty good, and Todd McClellan has done a great job. Their power play just again last night 2 for 4. He's not afraid to put the second unit out on occasion. So that's been the difference in Detroit's comeback this year. To me, is the consistent power play. It's amazing.
Been on fire, and the race is on, certainly in the Eastern Conference. And from Leafs Nation perspective, we're just hoping this is our year. I just chuckle. You have 14 Stanley Cups. We just want one, Scotty, please.
Oh no, I mean they're very. I mean, look how close they are to the first place. I think they're a couple of points behind. I mean, I don't know if that's the end all to finish. You're going to end up, whether you finish first or second in those divisions, you're going to end up with a pretty good team, even when you're playing the second wild card. But the way that Berube's got experience in the playoffs. I mean, he took a team from nowhere and won a cup and beat a good team. And when you win a 7th game, he's a pretty confident guy. And I think Toronto, they've got enough scoring as long as they can work on their shutdown game. That's to me and he's obviously doing it, because they announced that yesterday that they practiced. They haven't been as happy with their goalie out situation by the opposition. I guess they've given up goals that But it's a tough. I don't know how you practice it because, boy, it's tough to defend those 6-on-5, and then if you get a penalty and your face off is crucial. But I like their team because they don't seem to really have to worry about scoring as much as some teams, and that's a big factor. If they can just, they could just tighten up the last stretch of the season, and that's what they have to do in the playoffs.
You're the best, Scotty. Appreciate the time. Love catching up with you. Talk soon, okay?
Yeah, bye, Carter. Bye.
Thanks, Scotty.
Take care.
Bye.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Roseau. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.